Okay, so now we come up with the second part of the test. And here we see code words. As I think I mentioned to you in class more than once, factor completely. The word completely always means 2 steps. Told you growing up, my dad called me Butch, Bob, Buddy, anything like that, life was good. If he said Robert Carl Lindquist Jr., that means the beatings were about to begin. So, if I see the word factor, that means do what I just did in the previous section. If I see factor completely, there's a whole new message being given. It means you have at least 2 steps. You might even have more, but at least 2 steps. Number 9, what do they share in common? What do we always do before we cross the road? We look for things they share in common. They share in common in x here. So I get x times x squared minus 81. And now you should recognize that this is a difference of 2 perfect squares. So it's x times x plus 9 times x minus 9. One of the things we see kids do, sometimes they leave out the x, and they only put, cover up the x with your hand if you will, they only put x plus 9 times x minus 9. That is incorrect. Has to be all 3 parts. The x has to be there, the x plus 9 has to be there, and the x minus 9. So we take a look at number 10 now. Again, what do we do before we cross the road? I know it sounds boring, and you're probably getting annoyed that I say it, but how many times did we say it before the test, and it apparently didn't make much of a difference for some of you? Now we look, they share a 5 in common. That leaves me with an n squared plus 5n minus 6. Now I need to factor my trinomial. See, this is the first step of the factoring. Now comes my second step. 5 times n plus 6 times n minus 1, because I'm going to add to 5, multiply out to negative 6. So if I check, do a quick mental check here, n times n is n squared, n times negative 1 is negative n, 6 times n is 6n. 6n and negative 1n does make 5n. That's not a square, that's a check mark. And then 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. And then if I go back and multiply that all by 5, I come out with what I started with, 5n squared plus 25n minus 30. Okay, so what we know now is that factor completely means what? 2 steps. Very, very, very important that you realize factor completely means 2 steps.